All right, people. I did a segment on this offline, not with a live stream audience, but it's just so much more fun having you around. I love strikes. I love general strikes. Every lefty should. And the reason why I love them, well, you know what? I'll get to the long bit later. The short bit is that because they're poggers. But people, the biggest general strike in, as I understand it, human history, over 200 million workers and farmers paralyze India. 200 million. I can't even fathom. The population of the United States is like 330 million. This is in the ballpark of the population of the United States, the entire country. This is larger. This is unprecedented. This is larger than any collective worker organization in human history. And why? Well, we read the article to find out. On Thursday, some 200 million workers held a one-day general strike in India. This massive day in action was called by 10 trade unions. Unions lead to strikes. And over 250 farmers' orgs, and was accomplished by massive protests and a near total shutdown of some Indian states. According to the call put out by unions, the general strike was organized against the anti-people, anti-worker, anti-national, and destructive policies of the BJP government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, I could talk for a year on Modi and what a piece of shit that guy is, but I think the fact that his incompetence inspired the world's largest worker uprising ever should speak enough to him. Their demands included the withdrawal of all anti-farmer laws and anti-worker labor codes, the payment of, we could go through all of it, but essentially workers' rights. Workers' rights, food on the table of hardworking individuals. They're fighting essentially for subsistence comfort, something to which I believe they should be entitled. India is rapidly developing. Vosh, this could be in the US, but we all plan. That's a great fucking point. Why are we such pussies in the United States? Real, though. Real. India has a lot of problems. The country of India has a lot of problems in it. In a wide variety of civic, social, cultural, but in spite of all of that, they were able to mobilize about 250 million human beings. 250 million, with a B, to protest for their class interests. Now, I'm asking a little facetiously, why are we such pussies? There are reasons why America is the way it is. First of all, we don't have unions. Union membership has been declining for like 70 years. Ever since the New Deal, when this has been about at its peak, thereabouts, it's been declining. And a relentless propaganda campaign from American corporations has been convincing its workers that they don't need unions, You've all seen it. Have you ever worked at Walmart? Have you ever worked at Amazon? Have you ever worked at a grocery store? There's a decent chance, if it was a big corporate bid, that at some point you were given a little module that you had to watch as part of your employee training on unions. And they tell you all sorts of things. They tell you that unions are harmful, they cost so much money in dues and fees, they're predatory, and that, hey, the corporation you work for, they're a family. So why do you need unions? What are you, a home wrecker? You look at all that, you got the laws put in place at both the federal and the state level, which make it harder for workers to organize. And the outcome of all of this is that we live in a country where a general strike of this magnitude is almost impossible. But it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Listen, folks, when you ask a lefty, here, this is a personal frustration of mine, okay? Because I'm pro-voting. I think that you can actually change things through voting. In fact, that's one of the main reasons I think it's important for Democrats to be in office rather than Republicans. Biden's administration will be less anti-union than Trump's administration. A lot of lefties don't even pay attention to the policies that come out of these presidential administrations, but let me tell you, the Trump administration was religiously anti-union. They did quite a bit to damage union rights in these countries. Biden says he's pro-union. Is he actually going to be pro-union? Almost certainly not. Is he going to be as bad as Trump? I really sincerely doubt it. And whether he moves the unions in this country in a better direction or just moves them in a worse direction slower than Trump does, the outcome is better for us because unions are the bedrock of collective worker organization. They are the foundation of collective action. One of the things that bugs me when I talk with lefties online is they'll say, wow, you want to vote? You want to participate in this bourgeois electoral practice and legitimize voting? But, ugh. And then I ask them, well, what do you like to do? And they say direct action. Now, if somebody just says direct action like that with no like follow-up or specification, they're full of shit, okay? This is a motherfucker, okay? The only direct action they're doing is the firm fucking grip they're applying to their cock with their hands as they massage themselves vigorously while spam posting on Twitter about how morally superior they are to every other lefty who bothers to go to a voting booth once every 4 years, okay? Or 2 years, I guess. That's the direct action they're applying, the five-finger grip, okay? Direct action can mean a lot of things. Direct action can mean stuff like bringing food to the homeless. You know, that does create a kind of solidarity, especially in a local sense. And that's great and that's good. And people should do that, you know? Direct action can mean a lot of things. But one of the main things people imply when they say direct action is striking. There were a lot of people calling for a general strike just a couple of months ago when we were, you know, because every month we have more and more issues with, because we're not getting any housing stimulus and people are like on the brink of homelessness. So people talk about a general strike. We don't get a general strike in this country. We don't have unions. You need organizations around which people can realize their class interest. You need some kind of central, not centralized across the whole country, but at least some kind of directed organization to facilitate striking. You can't just do them off the cuff with nothing else supporting you. You need the unions, and building those unions is really important. I'd say that's actually the most important kind of direct action in this country right now, being able to build unions. Unfortunately, I've never been in a union, and I've never created a union. There are people watching this stream right now who have done both of those things, and I defer to your expertise. Because unions are workers' organizations in the purest sense. Now, that doesn't mean that a member of a union is going to instantly turn into some sort of enlightened socialist or some shit, because that's not true. The unions were at their greatest in the United States back during the McCarthy era. There were people who were in unions who would fight collectively for their worker rights and then go home and beat their wife while explaining to their child that female orgasms are communism, okay? Unions don't make people socialist, but they do enable socialist action, or at least they make it easier. That's true. Nothing but solidarity. What's the opposite of critical support? Support for this massive general strike, and a reminder to the bourgeois of the world that at the end of the day, everything we rely on rests on the shoulders of the humble worker. That's why strikes are so important. Never forget that. There are other types of collective organization that can be broken. Protests can be broken. You send in the police, you send in the gas, you bomb them if you need to, but you can break protests, even big ones. It's always possible. But strikes are immortal, because everything we rely on today, from the food that goes onto the table of the middle manager to the yacht that is being piloted by the banker, all of it comes from labor. Nothing in our society functions without labor. Nothing. Literally nothing. It all breaks. So general strikes are very, very scary to the ruling class. There are other types of collective organization that can be thwarted, but not strikes. Because when you strike, if you just don't work, everything shuts down. And with how interdependent our modern day global economy is, all it takes is a couple days, no, a couple hours of halted production to bring capitalists to their knees. That's all it takes. Sometimes a delayed train shipment or a missed collection of shipping products. It doesn't matter. It takes very, very little. Because if one corporation is pledged to provide X goods to another corporation at a given, point in time, and they don't because their factory is striking, you set in motion a chain of failure that runs around the length of the world. That's why American corporations don't want you unionizing, because strikes are immortal. They are far stronger than anything else we have. Far, far, far stronger. So keep that in mind. As much as I dislike lefties who say, just don't vote, do direct action, as much as I hate that, and I do hate that, I do. Remember that there is, if nothing else, one form of direct action that is unfathomably powerful. Oh, imagine if 50 million workers would strike in the U.S. If 50 million workers were to strike in the U.S., they could get anything they wanted. Anything they wanted. They could get anything. Even Republican obstructionism wouldn't be enough, because Republicans are beholden to the interests of corporations, as Democrats are, though different corporations and to different extents. And those corporations need the strike to end. At the end of the day, this is one of the great weaknesses of capitalist societies. Fascist societies don't rely on this to the same extent, nor do autocratic state capitalist societies. But the society that we live in, laissez-faire capitalist societies, these societies rely on chains of command which are ultimately beholden to the production or the productive capabilities of laborers, no matter what else. So keep that in mind. And take some note in that, by the way. We have that shared identity, the shared identity of the worker, very, very important. Class consciousness, very, very, very important for people to reflect on. Because at the end of the day, our greatest capacity for enforcing systemic change, that does not come from ideology, that does not come from the books we've read, that does not come from economic theory, that does not come from racial protests. It doesn't come from anti-COVID lockdown protests. It doesn't come from anything except our ability to put our massive thumbs on the scale of global capitalism. That, at the end of the day, that's the most powerful tool we have. Now, all the other protests are important too. I'm just saying this is the real change maker. That's why the government and corporations let BLM happen. They let this stuff happen. They don't let unions happen. They don't let strikes happen. You can go look back at the beginning of the 20th century if you want to look at the history of unionizing and striking in this country, because there was a lot of bloodshed. A lot of bloodshed. However much a human life is worth, it was clearly in the monetary interests of the robber barons to kill union organizers en masse. And they did. And they will again if we start acting up.